So, well, Coach, welcome. This is Coach Rozy's Chalk Talk, and appreciate you coming in and joining us here today. So, usually we have coaches in, a speaker come in, but so you're a speaker that came in, but Coach and I are the only coaches that are going to be here right now. So, we're going to go viral with this and send it out, and it's going to go all over the country. So, those that maybe don't, I know in South Dakota, Iowa, and Minnesota, they know who you are, but if this is going down to Texas or maybe Ohio, you want to just give folks a little bit of background, who you are, where you're from, and what's brought you up to this point?
Well, my name's Lucky Huber. I grew up in a little town called Elk Point, just down the road from USD. Went to graduate from high school in 1986 and went to USD and was a walk-on pole vaulter. So I'm part of that whole crazy pole vault group that we have at USD. And was fortunate enough to be able to compete there for a few years. And then Coach Gottsleben got me into coaching. And went on and got my master's degree, worked as a director of academic advising for a while, worked as a women's track coach, and then about 12 years ago took over and became the director of track and field. So got a great program at USD. Kind of been fun. We're kind of that, you maybe call us a mid-major type of program, but we've got some great athletes. This past year we had a pole vaulter set the national record. He's been a 3-time national champion, and if we hadn't had the virus, he'd probably be a 5-time national champion, right, which would have been pretty cool too. But got a lot of great athletes, recruit kids from all over the world. So we have kids from Jamaica, Italy, Germany, Spain, Canada. I'm sure I'm missing somebody here. Right. We had a kid from the Czech Republic. That was fun. So really kids from all over the world, but we really try to have a lot of South Dakota, Iowa, Nebraska kids too in our program. And I'd say we're about 70-80% kind of those local 3 or 4 state area.
Yeah, well, and just bringing up the point, and that's kind of to talk just about from a recruiting standpoint. I mean, like you said, you're worldwide, so somebody listening to this, maybe from California or Texas or Florida, from the other side of the state, from that recruiting process, maybe you can walk through like how do you do it, or if, from a high school kid standpoint, what should they be doing from a recruiting standpoint, so from a coach's perspective, and then you see it of what can an athlete or a student athlete do to maybe get recruited if they're not really on the hot list right now of getting recruited.
Well, my good buddy Chad Lavin, who was the women's basketball coach, used to tell me how easy my job was. Because all you are is a track coach. All you got to look, can they run 10-7 or can they not? If they can't, then you don't recruit them, where they would always argue that. But the problem is that the 10-7 kids, everybody knows who they are and everybody can recruit those. So the rest of us are really looking for these kids that love the sport of track and field, that we can see improvements every year. I love a kid that is doing multiple sports, because that tells me they're not kind of burned out and plateaued out. So we look at all those types of things. And it's really more of an art than it is a science. There's not really this science where we can say this kid is going to be the next great kid. So what we're looking for are, how do we find kids and what kids connect to our university? That's the big thing that recruits need to understand as they go through this process is, you're only going to be in the dome or at our outdoor for about 2.5 hours a day. The rest of the time, I got to know that you're going to be able to go to the library and function well, you're going to love your roommates and get along with your roommates good, that you're going to feel comfortable. And so that's what we're really looking for, is those connections that way. So part of what we're doing is, you buy the lists and you're always looking at all the different sites that register kids and stuff, but that's the easy way and everybody's doing it that way. So our next trick is, where do we start digging? How do we have conversations with different high school coaches? And quite honestly, a big way we do it is who fills out our questionnaire. If you take the time to come to my website and fill out our recruiting questionnaire, that tells me that you're interested and available. If you can imagine, you can find a great shot putter and say, well, this is a kid that he can be the next 65-foot shot putter. There's a chance he's going to want to go play college football instead. So by the time you track him down and then figure out if that's what he wants to do, and then you're trying to recruit against football coaches for him, it gets to be difficult. Whereas as an athlete, if you're reaching out to a school or you're filling out their questionnaire, then they know, hey, they're interested in this school. And whether that sounds a little bit easy or not, it really sends a message, and that tells us that we're interested, and that's what we want, is kids that are interested in coming to our school.
So when you have a list, like, because you have your list of same thing of kids that you definitely want to have and work through, and when a kid comes in, but I always try to tell kids, and not knocking the different levels, but I'm like, if a big time school that they see on Saturday everywhere, or they're at the games, hasn't contacted you by the time you're probably a senior, you're probably not going to the Notre Dames or the Nebraskas or the Alabamas to do some things that some of these smaller schools, that it might be an opportunity. So how does a kid determine, like, I want, we've had some kids, I want to go play at Nebraska, and not to burst their bubble. We're like, you're probably not going to go play at Nebraska, and not to burst that dream in that bubble, but say, hey, there's a great opportunity to go to maybe even an NAI type school. Where do you kind of draw that line, or what would you tell kids from?
The big thing to think about is from as a recruit, what experience do you want to have in college? Now, you're an 18-year-old kid. We don't really know if you're making wise decisions. When we were 18, we probably did some things we shouldn't have done and made some, but that's really what you want to go back on. I have a daughter, for example. She grew up a Coyote. Her mom's a Hall of Fame basketball player at USD. All she ever wanted to do was play basketball at USD. But she realized, I'm not quite as good as those girls. So I could either go to USD, maybe sit on the bench, maybe get to play someday, or maybe I'll pick a different school. Maybe I can pick an NAI school and where I'm going to get to play. And I think that's a great example of someone being self-aware and saying, what's important to me? Is it being important that on a Saturday I'm in a football stadium with 100,000 people? Or is it important to me that I'm going to get some playing time and there's going to be a coach that's going to know who I am and they're going to care for me? And those aren't necessarily mutually exclusive, but you can kind of think of the balance. Right. If you're one of 25, and we'll pick on Kyle, if you're one of 25 shot putters in the school, are you going to get as much attention? Maybe not. And if you're the 5th best shot putter in the school, you don't get as much attention as the best shot putter does. So finding that spot where you can go in and do that. On the other side of that, sometimes it's good to find the spot where you're going to go and be challenged. One of the things that I sort through with the kids that I'm recruiting is, even though you're in Little Vermillion, South Dakota, it's still big boy and big girl track. We go to track meets. There's Texas A&M, there's LSU, there's USC, you said Alabama. We're doing that all the time. So you have to be the type of kid that maybe goes into a race and says, I may not win, but I'm going to run the fastest I can, and these other competition are going to help me raise up my level. Some people can't handle that. Some people would rather be in the spot where they would say, I don't necessarily want to go to a track meet where I'm going to PR and not make the finals. I want to go to a track meet where I can win and I can compete and I can have that success that way. So that's something that a young person needs to sort through. Whether you're going to be a bench person or you're going to be a star, do you have to win all the time, or do you like to have competitive people around you? If you come hurdle for us right now as a male hurdler at the University of South Dakota, our freshman hurdler is the fastest freshman in the country. So you have to be ready to go to practice every day and literally get your butt kicked. Some kids look at that and say, that's what I want. They've got a good hurdle coach, they've got good hurdlers, they're going to make me better. Other kids look at it and go, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be the top dog, and I like being the top dog. So then you'd want to find a spot maybe where hurdling wasn't emphasized as much.
Well, don't you think, and we talked about it before too, but the research, like look into the schools more than just going, well, that's in a small town in South Dakota. Because sometimes I think when we talk to athletes, it's like, well, they do compete against the big dogs, in track meets. They're like, oh, I never knew that. I thought they were going to do like almost like small little track meets. Like, no, they're actually going to competitions. So from the ability to go, wow, check in the school. I mean, what would you say about?
Well, I think a good example of that is this year and last year, our men's pole vault squad was ranked number 1 in the country. And that's in Vermillion, South Dakota. Our women's pole vault squad was ranked number 1 until the last meet of the year when Arkansas had a girl PR by a centimeter, and that bumped us to number 2. Last year, our high jump squad, which was made up of a kid from Minnesota who went 6'4" in high school, a kid from Kansas, a kid from Nebraska, and a kid from Parker, South Dakota. They were the number 1 high jump squad in the country. So you have to kind of find that spot. And one of the things that happens in college coaching, especially in track and field, is not everybody does like the high school coach. In high school, if I'm going to have a successful program, I'm covering all the events and I'm going to have as many kids out as I can. Well, you start looking at colleges, and a lot of colleges will really focus on certain areas. There's certain schools down south, they don't have many distance runners because it's 95 degrees all the time. Those kids don't get to train. They put their emphasis on the sprinters. You'll find other schools that are really big into distance running. Some people would argue we're really big into jumps at our school. Everybody kind of finds their pocket. And so as a recruit, you want to find that niche where you feel like, okay, I can go in here and who's going to be training me, and I'm going to be with these other people so that the culture that I'm in fits me, and it's the experience that I want to have. I want to go back to that word because that's the really key word in this whole recruiting. What experience do you want to have? Do you want to have a coach that is this way. You want to have a coach that's this way, and finding those things out. The hard part is doing that when you're 18 years old.
Well, and then and you mentioned too, Coach, not just from the sports standpoint, but it might be a fantastic fit from the sport, but if all these other, like you said, 3 hours a day is here, my other 21 hours are over here, and that sucks.
I call that the library test. You've got to be able to walk in the library because everybody has a cool weight room, everybody has a cool basketball, everybody has all those things, you know what I mean? And it's way overblown anyway, because all you need is a spot to power clean. Who cares about the rest of the stuff? But so if you can walk into the library and you feel like this is a spot where I can go, these are people that I feel like I can connect with. I can go in and eat with these people and feel comfortable. These people are like me and they're like-minded and they have the same goals that I do. Then you're going to find a spot to be successful. If you only go there because you think, wow, I want to go there and all I want to do is be this great track athlete or this great football player, there's a very good chance that while you're in college, you're going to get injured, okay? Whatever that is. I hope it doesn't happen, but it's going to happen. And as soon as you have that injury and you're not with that direct group, then you need all these other things to support you. And if you can look at it and say, you know what, it sucks that I'm going to miss a season because of my knee or my Achilles, but I came to USD because I want to be a doctor, and I can go over now and focus a little bit more on my med school, or I can focus on this major that I'm really excited about. That will get you through the tough times. If you get to a school and you say, all I'm here to do, play football, run track, play basketball, do baseball, and that thing is taken away from you, or you're not as successful as it as you think, then all of a sudden you step back and think, well, why am I here? If I can't be the starting pitcher, then I'm going to leave and go someplace else, and that turns into all types of things. I hate it when kids have to go through the transfer process. The transfer process is just a horrible thing to do. We've had kids do it both ways, but I always feel bad for them when they have to go through that process, because that's not what you go to college for. You go to college to graduate and do it in 4 years and be with those same friends.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you to kind of turn the corner and about, change. We know just right now there's so much change going on with the whole virus and seasons being canceled and saying we don't know if we're even be doing anything through the summer. And they're even talking, some folks are, I always say the naysayers, which might happen, but even in the fall that some seasons might be put on hold. From a track season standpoint and recruiting season standpoint, like we talked about, juniors are worried because this is kind of their year and they don't have a year. So kind of if you could walk through the process of that with some of the thought process that maybe kids are going through, they're pretty scared now.
So as upset as anyone is, I want to tell you where I was at. I was at the NCAA meet with the most athletes we've ever taken to the indoor championships, with an athlete that we felt like all 5 of them could be in the top 8. We felt like we could maybe be a top 10 team. We felt like we're ready to have a national champion again. And literally, the AD down there, he's a former AD at USD, where New Mexico, sends me a text and says it's going to be canceled. And so you just have the wind knocked out of you. So I know exactly what all these high school kids are going through. I'm right there. I'm standing next to all these other coaches, and my phone pops first because I got the insider, and then I just watched the whole room just sadness. And I think it was a little bit of shock. I mean, we were so shocked, we walked out of the stadium, didn't pick up the pole ball poles. We just walked out, and we're like, what are we going to do now? So we get, as college coaches, what you're going through as high school athletes. We understand the disappointment you have, but when life gives you lemons, you got to make lemonade. Right. You can't sit around with a sour face. We got to move on. And that's my challenge to these kids is let's go out and let's find some way to get better during this time. Maybe you're Abby Ripperda and you're hurt. Maybe this is a time that you can get recovered. And so it's a blessing in disguise. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So turn these things into things. So I think the big thing for kids to realize is in a year, in 2 years, depending on where you're at in the process, we're still going to need college athletes. We're not going to get to a spot where we say, well, we're not going to recruit baseball players, so we're still going to need baseball players. We're still going to need track athletes. We're still going to need football kids. So put yourself in a position where you can find the spot you want to go, and you can get connected with that coach and say, hey, this is what I want to do, and fill those needs for us too.
Yeah, and I know we kind of hit on this one too, especially on the radio show, but like how are you keeping in track with like your athletes? Because like I know you said a lot of them went home. You have some that are still on campus just because they're foreign students, but how are you doing things to like keep in contact with them, maybe sending them workouts and programs, or what's allowed?
So, well, right now the NCAA, I think in a very smart mode, is like, we don't know what to do, so do everything. Whatever we can do. We can communicate with our kids. The problem is there isn't really a spot where they can go and work out. So we're really handling it two-sided. One, we're looking at it from an athletic standpoint. How do we get our kids in a spot where they're athletically, they're doing something? At USD and most colleges across the country, they just went to this remote online learning. That's a lot of stress. So we're not putting them in a spot where you feel like, okay, you got to go out and you got to do this really hard workout today. On the other side of that, if you just sit around and look at a computer all day, you're not going to be in a good spot for your own mental. So we're looking at it that way. We're trying to figure out how to support our kids so that they can do well in the classroom. And then the mental health part of it too, just being there and reaching out to our kids every day. My kids are all used to getting an email once a week. I've been sending it more often now, just so they kind of know, hey, this is what's going on. Coach is still thinking about me. And the workout wise, I think the big thing is we have to create programs that are going to be flexible enough. We know what we want our kids to be able to do, but if we send out a thing that says power clean on Mondays and snatches on Thursdays and they can't get in the weight room, then they're not going to do anything. So what we're really looking at is this idea of how can we kind of mimic what a track season would be like from a training perspective. You guys understand training just as well as anybody else, but the idea that you have to push your body to another limit. So for example, if you want to get faster, you're going to have to do some things during this time here that you're going to run faster. So going out and running 3 miles isn't necessarily going to help your 100 today. Right. So how do you have practices? How do you have training sessions, especially when you have to be by yourself? No social distancing thing. Yeah. How can you put together some training things there? So what we're looking at for our kids is maybe back the quantity down a little bit and have some really high quality. If you can think of a high school track season where you compete on a Tuesday and then maybe a Thursday or maybe a Saturday, and you go out and you do a few things, or you're Kyle McKelvey and you go out and you have, I'm going to throw the shot put 6 times and I'm going to treat it just like a meet, and I'm going to measure every one of those throws, and then I'm going to go over to the discus and I'm going to throw my discus 6 times, but to get my intensity up, I'm going to measure them, and then I'm going to tell my coach what they are, and maybe better yet, tell everybody in your throw crew and have a little challenge going back and forth that, hey, I went out and I did this today. Part of what we want to be able to do this time of the year is still maintain that intensity. That intensity is what's going to be important as our athlete continues to be able to develop. So we're looking at it from a mental way, an academic way. We can't have kids go home and say, I'm home now, I'm on vacation, because then they're not going to be eligible. So that's a big concern for college coaches. And then really putting kids in a spot where we can keep developing. If you just keep doing the same thing every day, you're not going to get better. So how are you going to change that up so that your body has that little bit of a track season mentality or season mentality where you can really improve and get to that next level?
Well, and I know you mentioned that, and it's not so big in South Dakota, but with maybe summer meet, and like we say, we don't know definitely what summer's going to hold, but there might be some opportunities if things would clear up, that there could be some track. Things that some kids could look at, those opportunities.
I would say that I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful that by June this thing is kind of slowed down a little bit and people are saying, okay, it's time to go out and do some stuff. And maybe if it's not all over the country, maybe other spots of the country will be able to do this, but some summer track would be really good. Whether it's USA track and field, AAU track and field. If we were little kids, we all remember the Hershey track meets. Yeah. Maybe we create some of those here in South Dakota. Maybe there's an East River one and there's a West River one, and then the championship is in Vermilion, or we go to Brookings and run one, or we go to Fargo and have a regional meet. And I think those type of things are out there. So my message is, as you're sitting on the couch today feeling sorry for you because your track season, get up, do something, and let's figure out when the next opportunity is. Because when you get an opportunity, you want to be ready for it. You don't want to have that opportunity and then not be ready for it and then expect a college coach to look at it and say, oh, this is where they're at. If you get a chance in this summer to go run a hurdle race, let's be ready to go run a good hurdle race so that you can show that to the coach and say, hey, I trained and this is what I did. We're all going to have a star by our season. We're all going to know that when we go back and recruit, this was the year the kids didn't get to have that. So we're going to recruit off of sophomore marks. We're going to recruit seniors off of junior marks. But realistically, it's not always that different to what our kids in South Dakota go through. We recruit a lot of kids in South Dakota that really only have 2 or 3 track meets where the weather is good, and that doesn't mean they'll have the competition that day. You know what I mean? That's why the state track meet in South Dakota is such an amazing event, and Howard Wood, because they bring all these competition together, and finally I get good weather and competition on the same day, you can get those good performances. So we kind of look at it from a perspective of, you're not necessarily what your mark is. It's where's your mark at? Is it progressing and getting better? And what types of things can you do? And what's your likelihood to be able to be successful when you get to college? I'm going to throw one more thing in here as you're sitting at home. your grades are going to be really important. This is a really important time to make sure your grades all come through. Doing the ACT prep. You're thinking, well, I'm going to get a 19 on my ACT. Well, if there's a certain school that you want to go to and it's a little bit more exclusive, getting that ACT up a little bit higher. Or certain schools in the state of South Dakota, for example, offer academic scholarships at 24 ACT. If I study my ACT and I work hard this semester, instead of getting that 21, which I would have got, I get a 24, maybe college becomes a little bit more affordable for me. So I think the grades are going to be really important right now, and focusing on that and getting yourself ready for those future tests.
Well, and as a coach, you look at that too, right, Coach? Like, it's like, hey, this kid did keep his grades up. He did have an opportunity when he stepped in. He was at his peak of where he could be at, instead of, like you said, goes to a competition, kind of fails, and you go back to look and say, okay, well, during the spring semester, he let his grades drop. Maybe it tells you a little bit about the individual.
So when we recruit a kid, very few kids are able to come in and help a college program as a freshman. So what we have to look at is this idea of, we're going to invest in this kid. So are we picking the right person? Are we picking a person who's going to work hard, has a good attitude, is going to be committed to this? On the other side of that, you can have all those things, but after your freshman year, if you flunk out, my investment hasn't been any good. So I need to be able to know that you're going to be able to be successful, handle the work in the classroom and on the track, because then by the time you've gone through that red shirt season, or you're a sophomore or you're a junior, and all these things are clicking, though, that's who we're recruiting. We're not recruiting you to be great as a freshman. Very few kids can come into a college track program and help as a freshman. But we want to be able to see, is this the kid that we should invest in? And Division I schools invest a tremendous amount of resources into these kids, from advisors to tutors to travel gear to everything. It's just crazy. So that's what I'm looking at, is I'm investing in that kid so that by the time they're a junior or senior, they can help us win a conference meet, or they can be an All-American.
Let me ask you, from an investment standpoint, us being strength and conditioning coaches, a lot of times, because we deal with different high schools, and some of the mentality is, like we've talked about before, and we talked about with Cleat, is that, you know, summers are usually pretty good for the resistance training stuff, but from what you guys do, and then what we'll see is in high schools, a lot of times the performance training off the track, off the basketball court, off the field kind of diminishes, because they're like, well, we are spending so much time with football. Now we're doing our sport, we're doing track. We're not going to go to the weight room. We're not going to do those components. How important is that, from like what you as a head track coach tie into what they're doing in the strength and conditioning and from the performance? And I know it's not always like bench heavy, squat heavy, but it's like, is that an important component for the kids?
Well, it is, especially when we're talking about the high school kids and the young college kids. By the time you're a junior or senior in college, you're kind of you're a pretty stable spot. We're not going to see big bumps from you. But when you're 16 years old and you're just starting to learn how to shave, your body is doing some amazing things, as you both know. And if you can hit on those things, and you can do things that are going to support your human growth hormone and things like that, so that to me is why the year-round training is so important. I really struggle with the, let's say, and we'll pick on track coaches, the track coach that says, okay, we're going to start track season, we're going to lift weights for 2 weeks, and then we don't lift weights anymore. You haven't helped the athlete. You've hurt the athlete. 2 weeks hasn't got you any better. So I really think that being on it, whether it's through a program like you run or through a high school that has it systematic, so it's not the basketball coach doing one thing and then the football coach and then the track coach and then the baseball coach, and all of a sudden these kids are on 4 different programs. That makes no sense to me. An athlete is an athlete, and what an athlete needs to be able to do, for the most part, is pretty similar. Cleats football kids aren't doing that much different stuff than AG's throwers or my sprinters. Now, sets and reps change. Where you peak at is a little bit different, but we're getting in the weight room. We're all power cleaning. We're all squatting. We're all trying to get faster. That's a year-round thing. And then how do I become a better athlete is even more important when you're talking about someone who's 16 or 17 or 18 years old and they're just learning how their body works. So to be able to do things that enhance that is really important. And I would even argue that's more important than the extra hour of shooting free throws or the extra hour of working on some of the football drills that we do, you know. One of the big things is if you're really doing speed stuff, you're running fast. You know, and I love my football coaches I had at Oak Point, and then we didn't have very good teams, but we loved it. But, you know, we thought of conditioning was this thing you did at the end, and you had your pads on, and you ran 60s until somebody puked, you ran. That's not conditioning. So if that's what you're counting as your speed work, you're not really getting faster doing that. it's probably hurting your body more than you think. Right. So having these other times where you say, 2 days a week, I'm going to be able to get speed training, which I'm running 30, 40 meters, and I'm getting in the weight room and doing things, is really important as these athletes keep developing.
Nice, yeah. Do you have some questions, Coach?
No, I mean, you gotta, if you're gonna get faster, you gotta run fast, right?
Right.
You just, a bunch of 80% reps aren't gonna help you get faster.
Yeah, and that's, your body adjusts to what you do. So even though 3 of us are a little bit over the hill and a little bit over the...
Or 2 of us anyway.
He's a little over the hill. He's not going to be able to run the marathon. If we went out every day and we ran, at some point a mile would become easy for us.
Right.
It's the same way with training. So you have to be able to, what do you want your body to be? And I think that's sometimes what people miss is they think they're developing a basketball player or a football player. I will tell you, if you go and just watch a sporting event, sometimes the best basketball player isn't necessarily the best athlete. But as a college coach, they're sitting there seeing that really good athlete. That college coach can teach you how to dribble. They necessarily can't get you to be the best athlete on the floor. So I think that's what you want to be looking at as a young coach, as you're developing these kids, is how are they going to get better? How am I going to get a team of fast kids, strong kids, more flexible kids, those types of things? Because what you want your team to be is what they're going to become. Does that make sense? If you think it's important that you're big and everybody squats so much weight, then that's what you're going to do. And I'm not saying that's bad, but you have to build your program and hopefully you're heading it the right way.
So how much do you look at, and I know the big thing right now is multiple sport, which I agree, I grew up in Gayville,
right.
Which we did multiple sport and you did too. Do you see that as a great thing for the kids that are coming in and then just specialize once they get to college to now I'm going to be a track and field athlete, but they've had that experience, and from maybe an injury standpoint, an ability to train standpoint, is that a benefit, do you think?
Yeah, I really do. Part of it is that if you had to look at someone and say, do I want someone who just goes out and trains every day, or I want someone that goes out and competes? That's what I look for in the basketball kid that's going to be a track kid. I want a girl like this girl I've got coming from Salem, that she's tough and she goes out and competes and she hustles. That's a kid that when she gets on the track, she's going to be a stud.
JC.
JC Pulse is a great example of that, and that's what we're looking for. Not this kid that has done all these workouts and, whether it's distance, they run all these miles and they've been running 60 or 70 miles a week and then they get to college. Well, it's hard to see that curve where they're going to come in, and you do run into a lot of those overuse injuries. So what I want to see is I want kids that are going to compete. I had a girl I coached one name from Dolan, South Dakota. Sarah Deckert was the name. She was a national champion in the 400 when we were Division II. I would tell you she would beat you in checkers, and she would cheat until she did, because she was a competitor. And that's what you want. And that's what I see if you're out for football, if you're out for basketball, if you're out for volleyball, you're out for track, if you're doing these other sports. That's what football coaches want to see. They want to see, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to run that 100 as hard as I can, because when it gets tough on the football field or on the basketball court, we know those are kids that are going to compete. And that's the difference. There's lots of kids that are good athletes. We want athletes that go out and know how to win and are willing to sacrifice and be good teammates, and maybe not even be super successful as the basketball player, but they're out there supporting their teammates, because then they're going to be a really good teammate when we build them when they're back on a college team and they're not the star. Right. So that's what we're looking for, kids like that come in and love to compete. That's why I love the multi-sport part. That's part of why I love the multi-sport athletes.
Yeah.
Well, I think just to circle back one more time on the recruiting, what would you tell a freshman, sophomore, junior, either kid or parent, what do they need if they think they want to be a collegiate athlete in any sport, not just track or football, any sport across the board? What can they do over the course of these next 2 weeks? Fill out questionnaires, write emails, stuff like that.
So first thing I would say is being a college track athlete is a great experience. And the reason I'm going to say that is because when you get to college, you then automatically get part of a team, and there's people watching out for you. And I'm the former director of academic advising at USD, so I saw kids come to college and they didn't have that connectedness they had in high school. So no matter what, it's not like you shouldn't have a stigma about being a college athlete as a bad thing. Go out and do that. So first thing is, if you have the talent and you have the desire to want to do that, then let's find the right spot and go back to that experience. So the first thing I would do is I would spend some time looking at different schools. And Kyle and I, we talked about this as we were preparing. What's that goal school? What's that one really cool spot? If I could get a scholarship offer at the University of South Dakota, that'd be the greatest thing in the world, and I want to do that, put that on your list. And then maybe figure out, okay, some other schools that, you know what, I had a kid that was a year older than me in high school, and he went to school X. I'm going to explore school X, and he's having fun there, and people like him, you know what I mean? And then put your plan B on there, you know what I mean? What's some of those smaller schools that maybe you don't really think that much about, but let's find a few spots like that. College track coaches, college football coaches, they're great people. If you can get your son or daughter to be connected with someone like that wants them to be successful in their whole life, it's going to be great. So it's going to totally change their life. Once you kind of get that list, start doing a little bit of research. That research should be talking to kids that are on the team. Maybe you know some kids. Maybe you know a bunch of kids that went to Dakota Wesleyan from your town. Talk to them. What's school like there? What's their team like? And then reach out to us. Don't make an assumption that you're going to just sit there and then all of a sudden we're going to come knock on your door. And part of that is, and I don't want this to sound like an excuse, but part of that is college track coaches are busy doing tons of things. And so we miss kids. You know what I mean? But if you come knock on our door, Jeff O'Connell is a good example of that. He was a great athlete from Phillips, South Dakota that kept knocking on Coach Gottslaben's door, had an amazing experience as a college track athlete, very successful. Now he's a PE teacher in Brandon, so being a college track athlete led to that. And someday he's going to be a great high school track coach. You see how that all fit together?
Right, yeah.
But it was really just him saying, hey, I want to come to USD, and this is the experience that I want to have. So don't be afraid to reach out to us. Send us an email, but don't make it that generic sending it to 25 people, because we can all see who you sent it to. So do a little research and say, you know what? I'm really interested in the University of South Dakota. I'm interested in going to med school, so it's a good fit for me to be able to come there. Tell me your ACT scores, because that's going to be important. Can I get you into school? Are you going to be able to be successful? And tell me your performances. Don't hide it. A lot of times I'll get emails, and I read through the whole thing, and I'm not even sure, A, if they're a male or female, because some of the names, and B, what they do. They're telling me that they have a good work ethic and they have all that other stuff, but I can't see how far you throw the shot put or how fast you run. That's part of what I need to be able to see right away so that I can get connected with you. So sending an email and then doing a follow-up to those things. 99% of the coaches in the country are going to have a recruiting questionnaire, so you should go onto that school's website for two reasons. One, fill out the recruiting questionnaire so that we know you're interested, and two, look through that team. What are the facilities like? Where do they travel to? Who are the kids on the team? Are you looking at the kids on the team and saying, wow, these kids are a lot better than I am? That may not be the best fit for you. Keep it as your dream school, that's fine, but then look at another school and you're like, wow, this kid and we're pretty similar. We're both about the same height. We both scored 12 points a season in basketball. I think this is a spot where I could fit in, so you can find a spot where you can be successful. The worst thing you can do is get wrapped up in this idea of that because the school is named X, that's the best spot for me to go. Does that make sense? That's a bit, and our Coach Miles is a great example of that. You can line up all the schools in the country, and unless you know pole vault, you don't know that the University of South Dakota has got the best pole vault program in the country and the best pole vault coach in the country. You'd start with and say Florida and Texas and all those other spots, but that doesn't mean they have better pole vault programs. It doesn't mean they're bad schools, but as an athlete, you want to find the spot where you're going to have the type of experience you want to have. And a lot of that's going to do with who your teammates are and who your coaches are going to be. Your coaches have a huge impact on your college experience. So after you've sorted through those things, then schedule a visit. And if you haven't heard from me, then tell admissions, I'm coming to campus, this is the date, and I want to meet with the track coach. And if the track coach doesn't find time to meet with you, then like you said, he's probably not that, or he or she's not that interested in recruiting you. You know what I mean? But have that conversation, find out what that's like, and don't be afraid to say, hey, I just want to be on the track team. What's it going to take for me to be able to do this? Or can I get a chance to walk onto your team? And by asking that question, then it can lead to, is there a scholarship available for me? Or yes, heck, Kyle McKelvey, we want you. We're even going to give you scholarship money. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
If you just ask me, hey, is there a scholarship for me? Then that doesn't tell me you really want to be on my team. It tells me you're more worried about the money and the scholarship, and if that's not necessarily the right fit.
Right.
So that to me is the big thing, is working through that process. And this is a good time to do that. Spend time on the internet, talking to people, sending real meaningful emails to coaches, And when a coach responds to you, answer it. You know what I mean? It can be simple. We can text now. Right now we're recruiting kids that are juniors. I think all the sports now are into junior recruiting. Okay, so that means as track kids, we're going to be recruiting you basically off your sophomore marks. And sophomore marks are very difficult. Sometimes they get better, sometimes they go the other way. You know what I mean? So we're going to want to do things like that. If you really, really kind of know a spot you're interested in, though, reach out to that coach, find a way to talk to that coach, and get on that campus and see if that's really what you want. And when you're on that campus, spend time with the kids on the team, because that's who you're going to be with, and that's who's going to tell you what the program is really like.
Wow, that's good, Coach. Hey, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way? Go to the website. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yep, go to the website. I got a really simple email. It's track@usd.edu. And even if it's not about coming to USD, you just have a question. Hey, Coach, you mentioned this. Do you want to do that? I literally reached out to probably 50 kids in the state of Iowa the other day. They're not going to come to USD, but they're just going through the same process these South Dakota kids are, and they just need help. How do I do this? What do I do here? What should I do? And I'm answering emails to all those kids. I have no doubt they'll never come here, but I'm just helping them through the process. And I think that's what coaches have to do right now, is support these people as they're going through a tough time, help them work through this process a little bit, and point them in the right direction. And I've suggested one of the kids contacts Dakota Wesleyan because I thought he was a great fit to what they want to do, the level, and the major he was looking at. So that's part of what we should do. If we're all into just recruiting kids to come to our own school, then we're doing this wrong. But if we can help a kid find the right school where they can have an amazing experience, and then go out and help kids keep developing and keep spreading the love of track and field or football or basketball, then we're doing our job as college coaches.
Yeah, appreciate it, Coach. Thanks so much. Yeah, thank you.
We did it.
Okay,
We did it.
you're going to cut out all the stutters?